In this video, I will show you how to dramatically improve your watercolor portraits with this simple exercise. There are two key components to a successful portrait painting. The first one is an accurate drawing. Obviously, all the features need to be the right size, in the right place, the right shape. If everything is very precise, your portrait will look like the person you're painting. The second extremely important component is painting shapes and not a collection of features. We need to think about our subject in terms of light, mid-tone, and dark areas, and not coloring the skin tone, then drawing the features, then add the hair on top of the head. This approach, kind of painting a list and not shapes, can result in your portrait looking fractured because you will be looking like in a separate area instead of working on your painting as an overall, whole piece. And also, in the worst case scenario, your painting will look flat and kind of cartoony, unrealistic. To address the first problem of the drawing being slightly off, my suggestion is to trace the photo using a charcoal rub on the back side to give yourself a guideline for the preparatory drawing. I don't consider this cheating, but doing what we need to do to produce a successful piece of art. To say that artists absolutely should not trace photos or sketches would be the same as to tell architects not to use rulers or straight edges and just draw freehand. That, of course, just my opinion, so you can give me yours in the comments below. If you would like to know more about painting and drawing people's faces, you can watch my class, You Can Sketch Faces. In this class, I talk about the structure of the human face and the head, how to add tone, how to show the structure with light and shadow, and also how to quickly and easily to produce watercolor and mixed media sketches. This class is available on my website, tammyrapp.com, or if you have Skillshare membership, it's available there as well. I left you all the links in the video description below. To resolve the second problem of concentrating on the person's features and not tonal shapes, I suggest the following exercise. We will turn the reference photo in our painting upside down and paint it like this, at least until we get to the darkest darks and small details. Before I started painting, kind of in my mind, I assigned certain colors to certain tonal areas on the photo. So I'm thinking the lightest areas will of course be paper, since we're working with watercolor. Then the very light midtones can be maybe yellows, dark midtone. I will use this turquoise that I have here on the upper left on the palette. And for darks, I will be using ultramarine blue. Hopefully that will be dark enough. And I can always mix it with Scarlet Lake to make it darker. If you don't feel comfortable using several colors, you think it's too hard, too confusing, start with just using one color and doing kind of monochromatic study, and then as this becomes easy, you can start adding other colors, which will make your portrait a little more vivid and a little more painterly. This technique of painting upside down can be used as an exercise just to train your brain to see shapes and not the person you're painting, so to speak. Or sometimes what artists do, they paint the portrait the right way up and then turn their work upside down at a certain point to get a more abstract view, kind of fresh perspective to see the mistakes. So keep in mind that there are several ways to take advantage of this method. I cut out pauses from this video, but I didn't speed it up very much because I want you to see how those shapes appear on paper. I want you to see the process in real time, basically. So hopefully this video is not too long and you'll be able to watch it to the end, and let me know in comments if you prefer this speed or if sped up videos are better for learning. It's important to mention that to help myself see the shapes that I'm building on paper, I squint when looking at my reference photo or when looking at my model if I paint from life. That eliminates the details that can be too distracting, and I can see shapes a lot better. So squinting really helps to see overall shapes. Okay, let's put Holbein's Scarlet Lake on the shirt stripes. They will obviously be the darkest dark. I already see that this is obviously not going to be dark enough, but like I said, I am going to use ultramarine blue on top to make these areas a lot darker. And as you see, I am painting the background at the same time because it's close to light mid-tone. I am not treating figure separately and background separately. I am treating it all as tonal shapes. Alright, I think we can move on to darker mid-tones. Again, squinting when looking at the reference photo and trying to find those slightly darker areas. As usual with watercolor, we have to work in layers to build up tone. And of course, I went straight for the eyes. Even upside down, the human eyes really draw our attention. So I need to work a little more on this exercise to really train my brain not to think about my subject as a human being with a collection of features, but just seeing the tonal shapes. But I think I'm still okay, so we'll keep going up, drawing those shapes with my brush with turquoise. In light mid-tone, I covered a little bit too much ground. There will be a couple lighter shades here, so I am going to pick up color with a clean brush. That's why I have two water containers on the right side. Always need clean water for those small corrections that we need to do for picking up color without muddying it. Darker mid-tones can be ultramarine blue as well, just to give my painting some variety. Just throw in several blues in diluted form before I start darkening certain areas. And like I said, you don't have to use this many colors. Even one or two will be great for this exercise, especially if you're just starting on portrait painting. The reference photo for this video was generously provided by my fellow artist who took this self-portrait. This photo really caught my eye because it does have light and shadow. You can clearly see them, but the shadows are not super dark. This happens sometimes, especially if you take a photo without enough light or in a very harsh light, like sunlight in the middle of the day. The shadows become black and it's very hard to use photos like that. Portrait painting is hard enough, so good photo is essential to make our life at least a little bit easier. Thank you so much, Nancy, for allowing me to paint from this beautiful photo. While we paint these shapes, it's important also to look at their edges, because some of these shapes will have hard edges, like the one I'm painting right now, and some of them will be soft. So it's easy to soften an edge, again, with a clean brush with a little bit of water, not too much water, otherwise you will get those ugly cauliflower blossoms, but just slightly damp brush and soften the edge if you need to. So this is an exercise that trains you to pay attention to detail, because the shape itself is important, but also its edges are important. So we really need to train our eyes to pay attention and to see accurate information. And I didn't do this, but before you start, you can even make yourself like a little reference sheet and paint some swatches. So if you, especially if you have some new colors on the palette, you're not super familiar with them, so painting a few swatches and then referring to them during painting will be helpful as well. So you will know exactly how much tone you can build with certain color if you're working with different colors. Okay, and I see I'm applying ultramarine blue on top of that Holbein's Scarlet Lake, and it really helps me to build the dark tone without using black, which I don't have on my palette. So painting two complements, orange and blue, on top of each other helps you to get the dark tone that you need in this area. starting to go over the darkest areas. Like I said, we need to build tone gradually with watercolor because it's transparent medium. So those black stripes that I need to paint there on top, I will gradually build that tone. All right, I'm going to let this dry, and then I will continue building tone and adding dark areas to my painting. This is my next step. I'm using Ultramarine Blue to paint those darkest areas that I see in the reference photo. So we're about halfway through the process. There will be some corrections and additions after this stage, but our painting, as you see, is starting to take shape. I don't know if you can see it upside down, but it does. And again, precision is key. So I'm carefully looking at my reference, or I would look at my model if I had a live model in front of me. Of course, the live model wouldn't be upside down. I would be painting right side up, but still the principle remains the same. Carefully looking at the shapes, kind of gauging how light or dark they are, and trying to reproduce the same shape on paper. Important to pay attention when we're working on the features. I already can tell it's very hard for me to paint the features correctly upside down, but I'm doing the best I can, and after I turn the painting around again, I can always make corrections and additions. I think my brush is a little too large for these details, for this size of painting, but I don't want to switch to a smaller brush because then I will get bogged down by details and kind of lose sight of my overall painting, of my overall goal here. So let's leave the face area for now. I think it's getting along pretty well, and we'll finish it a little bit later. I can see that this shape on the left side of the face is way too light compared to the darks that I painted, so a little more turquoise, and I'm going to darken this area, carefully paying attention to the shape of this area. You basically see the video in real life speed, so that's how slowly and carefully I have to go to get that shape right. Okay, can tell the eyes look weird, but let's turn our portrait right side up and balance everything out and add smallest details. I think I'm going to use some markers to do that. Okay, here are my black and white Uni Posca markers. If you watched the previous video I published, a painting of a pair of cute sheep, I used it there for the first time and I really loved it. So let's make some adjustments, darken some areas with black and add highlights with the white marker. They have brush tips, so they're excellent for adding details on top of watercolor. Again, even at this late stage, it's extremely important to squint when looking at your reference photos so you do not add too many details and make your painting look weird and fractured. Last thing I did for this painting, I went over the hair with a slightly larger brush and softened all those details that I painted upside down to kind of give it a little more unified look. And my portrait is done. Here is the final result. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it will be useful for your portraits and also for your watercolor painting. If it was, please give me a like and also subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all your likes and comments. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video here on Timer Up Studios channel.